Now, the tip-off that started off in Leeds last week was four Romanian Roma children were taken into care by police over fears that they would leave Britain before the suburb of the city, Hare Hills, that's the suburb of Leeds, burnt down. Now, they were forcibly taken into care by the cops in an incident which actually was the catalyst for what took place. But it wasn't obviously all Roma people, because there aren't enough Roma people for there to have been that many people to take to the streets. And I certainly don't think, for example, that it was Roma people on the streets shouting Allahu Akbar when the bonfire was burning, pictured here in that picture there on the Daily Mail. You can hear it here in this clip.
Oh my fucking dude.
So I've heard lots of media commentators, and I've read lots of pieces on this, and a lot of them are saying, you can't blame the Muslim community in Hare Hills, because actually this all originated with the Roma community. Now, it might well have originated with the Roma community, but then I don't think that actually you can lay the blame exclusively at their door, given that it was obviously, as I've just shown you in that clip, populated by Muslims when it came to the burning of the bus and then other things. And then last night in Hare Hills, and I haven't seen this reported anywhere, we have Lawless Leeds Mark II, because it kicked off again with, it looks like a vehicle or some form of a load of things being used as fuel to actually set a fire there. The police moving people on, cordoning off the street, and again it gets people out onto the street, gets them interested in what's going on. But Eunice, I wonder, have you heard that a lot of people are saying, actually it was the Roma community, so you're a massive racist if you say this was anything to do with Muslims? And two, do you agree with that narrative, or is this yet more gaslighting from the established media and political class in this country, because they don't want their tiny little diversity project to actually be put at risk?
Well, look, it could have started with the Romanian community, okay? But then the Muslims could have joined in, because they obviously despise this country, some of them, and they have no respect for the law enforcement. And I give you one example. Remember the riots back in 2011, where there was Tottenham, and it was about one guy, getting shot by police, and maybe it was a, so and so justified cause. But then what happened? Some people protest, and a bunch of 16, 17, 20-year-old kids, most of them from the black community, let's keep it real, they come and they start rioting, and they use it as an opportunity to loot, to set buildings on fire. And it was just this underlying anger and this underlying, sort of resentment. I see the same situation here. Maybe it was the Romanian community that started it, then the Muslim community is the one that joined it and just, pushed it basically out of proportion. And another thing I want to say is that I don't think anyone respects the police in this country anymore. I really don't. And I feel like one sign that a society is collapsing is when the citizens of that society, they do not respect the authority.
Well, it's not the Met Police in Leeds, of course.
Yeah. I mean, the police force in Leeds, whatever they're called.
But talking specifically about the police force in West Yorkshire, though, the West Yorkshire, under their purview, have allowed the Batley Grammar School teacher to be run off into hiding, not protect him as much as they could have done. There's also been elements of intimidation put forward against political candidates. I don't think there's been enough done there. Basically, the whole Batley Grammar School affair was handled absolutely abysmally. And you can see racial segregation building up and up and up, not as a consequence of white people not wanting to integrate, but the fact that there are these isolated communities that simply, one, either don't want to learn English. You can pinpoint whether people come from Pakistan, you can pinpoint parts of Britain and whether they come from Bangladesh. And I don't think that's a sign of integration. I see that actually as the underpinning weakness in the whole project. That actually we have invited people here that simply see themselves as others, as foreign, and they always will do because they have absolutely no intention of integrating at all. And if you
Mm.
don't get that integration, as we did with the Windrush community that came over, obviously very much smaller numbers, but Tony
Mhm.
Blair opening the floodgates and then now turning round and saying, as he did in an interview not too long ago, there are certain communities in Britain that simply do not want to integrate. Well, mate, you did this to us, and I have such complete and utter contempt for the politicians that, one, did do this, but two, that have aided and abetted it along the way, that allow the hundreds of thousands of people to actually come to this country from parts of the world that are just fundamentally different from ours. Because I do not think multiculturalism works. And I think the evidence is borne out in places like Hare Hills. And Alex posted a video of a woman who was shouting with a full heart, and you could see the look of despair in her eyes, talking about the
Yeah.
fact that her community has been completely ruined, Alex.
Yeah, yeah, a really, really brave thing for her to do. She's only a young woman and a mixed race woman. Might I add, not that I like to talk about identity politics very much, but the left would have absolutely hated that. A young mixed race woman standing up in a literally a crowd full of men saying that the British don't run anything round here. We've opened you into our community with open arms. We've given you everything. And this is what you show back to us. And she's absolutely right. She says, we don't want this. We want peace. We've invited you here. We love other nations.
Mm.
This country's been extremely welcoming, but we're seeing that generosity being thrown back in our faces constantly. There's many
Mhm.
people. I'd love to know what the employment rate statistics are in Hare Hills because I suspect it's rather low. But there's many people who live off of the state paid by taxes of people that do come to this country legally and do work hard here. And it's a slap in the face
Mhm.
to immigrants that do come to this country. My stepfather is one of them. Came here, has worked his entire life, worked his arse off this entire life, and integrated and assimilated into our society. He puts all of those people like those in Hales, put them at risk. And also, if we're talking about Muslim involvement and the Muslims community involvement in Hare Hills, just go and see who the councillors are in the area. You'll get an idea of
Yeah.
who is voting, who's being voted in.
Yeah.
And I can
Yeah,
just
Ali
tell you
Akbar
the two
Green.
parts. Moffin Ali is the Green Party
Yeah.
in Gibson and Hare Hills, and the other part of Hare Hills, which is Gibson and Hare Hills, the other councillor is Ashgar Ali. So you can't tell me that there's no Muslim involvement in these riots. I'm not
Yeah.
saying they started it, but they certainly were. Apart from Moffin Ali, who does seem like he was trying to at least
Hmm.
calm some of the protests down. Whether that worked or not, I don't think it did. But you can't just say it was all the Romas there. The
But
whole
then,
community got involved. It's a
even with
breakdown of society.
well, I agree, but even with Ali, in his interview, and I watched his interview on the night, and he's saying things like, "Oh, well, actually, the community's been ignored for far too long." He talked about funding and things like that. It wasn't a lack of funding. I'm from the northeast of England. I come from a council estate in County Durham. There wasn't much in way of activity and opportunity there, but we don't go around burning the town to the ground. There were definitely signs of social deprivation. There were definitely signs of children being in perilous situations with potentially unfit parents, but you don't go ahead and use it as an excuse to burn down and destroy with such reckless abandon. And I would just point out that Adam raises a very good point on YouTube, and he says, not only is there lawlessness, but the recent report, which was out today, on 40% increase in attacks on women being blamed generically on men, quote unquote. It's true, but why are we not profiling who exactly it is that's carrying out
Mm.
these attacks? I mean, Eunice, would you like to see a, a more statistical approach, data-driven approach that actually sets out who it is that's responsible for attacks like these, who it is that's responsible for actually causing trouble in areas like Hare Hills, but actually when it comes to sexual violence, having hard data and evidence to turn around and say, here's what's going on, here's why we need to actually lower immigration from certain parts of the world? Or does that make Adam and me a massive racist? I have no idea what the colour of Adam's skin is, of course.
No, I don't think so because I care about the truth. I care about statistics, and I care about. Look, for example, we know that in the grooming gangs in Luton, the Pakistani men are disproportionately represented, and that was exposed by Tommy Robinson. Okay, in the videos, you can see people. Majority of the people, they are, they seem to be Muslim or Pakistani or Afghanistani or from that area of the world. Yeah, there are some Romanians in there, and they're shouting Allahu Akbar. By the way, Allahu Akbar just means God is great.
Yeah.
It's not an offensive word. Like sometimes I believe in God still, right? Even though I'm not Muslim, I believe in God. And sometimes when I'm in a nervous situation, I just say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah to myself just to make myself feel better, right? So it's not a bad word, but because of the negative connotations that some terrorists have given to it and people like that have given to it, we see it as an offensive word. I do think there needs to be statistical research. And again, look, you cannot hide the truth. Okay, if there are certain groups are committing majority of the crime, then you should say it. We had this big debate in America that actually in, like, many states like Chicago, for example, majority of the crime is committed by African Americans. Okay, now you can argue, well, maybe there's a structural racism, maybe because they are from poorer neighborhoods, all of that, yeah. However, it doesn't excuse that kind of behavior. And one last thing I want to say about immigration and assimilation: when you have millions and millions of people coming to your country, then they don't really need to adapt and assimilate because all their neighbors are Pakistani. The whole
Yeah.
area is Pakistani. They don't need to, because they don't have to actually interact with any white person.
All right.
And that's why you need net. You know, back in the day, the reason why I believe multiculturalism can work as long as
Mm.
it's limited numbers, 30, 40, 50,000 nets per year, not
It's
millions
about
and
it.
millions per year.
Alex, hang on before you
Mm, mm.
say what you're about to say. It I've just lost my comment, Alex, because if you're piping up. I'll blame you. There it is from Dazzle Boy. This isn't me, Dazzy Boy. This isn't me, I promise. But it says the reason we don't do that with the data, and it's funny actually because we were talking about the data just before we got on air, and we were saying that we couldn't actually locate any comprehensive data readily available, easy to access. I looked through the J report into child sexual abuse, and I couldn't find the actual raw data and stats on demographics there. But Dazzy Boy says showing demographics doesn't fit the narrative, and it would expose certain demographics even further, which is why the established political class don't do it. The Uni Party is reticent to do it. We certainly won't see it under Labour. Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk, and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.